Do I say his name? That's a question. Let's just go one time. George Soros. GS. I'm sorry. Did I say J? I did. GS. George Soros involves himself in Ukraine. I don't know why I'm so scared. Because he himself is bragging about this on television. Okay, in an early 2014 news clip. It's here in my timeline. But this is the main reason for the talk, is because this has been aired on TV, and it's just like, what the heck? We have really forgotten what's going on. But George Soros, it brags about being involved in the Ukraine conflict.
First, on Ukraine, one of the things that many people recognized about you was that you, during the revolutions of 1989, funded a lot of dissident activity, civil society groups in Eastern Europe, in Poland, the Czech Republic. Are you doing similar things in Ukraine?
Well, I set up a foundation in Ukraine before Ukraine became independent of Russia. And the foundation has been functioning ever since. And it played an important part in events now.
It is something I believe why it's relevant today is because it's replicated in our news today. When the USSR is toppled and everything breaks down, Ukraine holds their first free elections. In 2004, the election is between Yanukovych and Yushchenko. Really hard names, big players. It's only going to get more confusing from here. Okay, Yanukovych, I want to point out, is a pro-Russian president, someone who tends to lean his allegiance towards Russia, versus Yushchenko, who is someone who is trying to get Ukraine into the EU, into NATO. Okay, and that seems to be the plan. The election happens in 2004. Guess who wins? The pro-Russian president. In Ukraine, a pro-Russian president wins, so that means Viktor Yanukovych is the winner. And the loser is Viktor Yushchenko. That's why it's confusing. They both have the same name. The reason why this gets messy, after Yushchenko wins, the government puts out polls by declaring exit polls from the polls. What's an exit poll? When you exit the poll, someone is there to survey you and you give them your vote, and it tells you, and that kind of like helps them based on who's going to win. The exit polls show Yushchenko winning, not by 1%, not by 2%. So it was like, oh, a calculation error. Maybe not everyone gave their vote, but they have him winning by 11%, like 20,000 votes difference for Yushchenko. So the government is saying Yushchenko really won. But the election results are in, for some reason, the Electoral College over there, I don't know how they do it, is saying, no, Yanukovych won. So what did they do? They published these exit polls, 4 different exit polls. And yes, not all of them were as drastic as 11%, but the most drastic one I know for a fact is 11%. And this is all being funded, how do they do all this? It's being funded by George Soros. That's right. I want you, if you don't believe me, to look up the International Renaissance Foundation, which is a non-government organization, a Ukrainian NGO founded by George Soros. It was founded in April 1990, IRF, as an integral part of the Open Societies Foundation. Wow, all the way back in 1990, George Soros is getting his fingers twisted in world domination. I was once stumbled upon, believe it or not, a Tesla rally, and they were all shouting, down with the billionaires, and they were protesting Tesla. So I was like, perfect time, and let me bring out George Soros. And I was like, you missed them all. You missed Joann's, you missed Party City, you missed Toys R Us. The only reason these are gone is because George Soros. If you want America to stay the same, you need to get him gone. And that's pretty much what my message to Ukraine would have been, is if you want Ukraine to stay the same, you got to get him gone. See, he affects real change in countries. The reason why there's mass protests, the reason why there's propaganda. Let's just put that word out there. I've been trying not to say it, but the reason why there's false information being put out, the reason why there's so much confusion is because someone is causing the confusion and directing public opinion using that confusion in their favor. Okay, this is only 2004. It gets more crazy from here, from 1990 to 2010. $100 million. That's how much money they spent in 20 years. This is a typical way to take over a country. Again, I said in the first segment, the word infiltration. We should be common with the word infiltration. I always used to say, if it happened in the States, then it happened in the church first. Okay, everything happened in the church first. We can all learn a lesson by studying church history and apply, and some of it will apply to today, I guarantee you. Okay, so actually, wait, the exit polls, I forgot about those. They cause a massive uprising, and it's called the Orange Revolution, and they force a re-election, and Yushchenko is put in power. Yanukovych runs in the next election, okay, for prime minister. There's an election for prime minister, believe it or not. In Ukraine, there's a president and a prime minister. It's not like in Europe where there's only a prime minister, or like in Germany where there's only a prime minister, or in America where there's only a president. We don't have a prime minister. But in Ukraine, there is a president and a prime minister. So guess who wins the prime minister just 2 years later? It's like the head of Senate, I guess. The Speaker of the House. I don't know, vice president. Could we say vice president? Maybe. I don't know. But Yanukovych wins the prime minister after being ousted in the revolution. Whoa. Okay, so the exit polls caused the uprising. That scared him away from the presidency. But in this election, what happens next? He gets ousted again. Teaser. That's what happens. But how does it happen? Well, because there's so much conflict between the prime minister and the president, between Yushchenko and Yanukovych. The president right now is Yushchenko. The prime minister right now is Yanukovych. And there is a rally in Congress to reignite the Orange Revolution. Okay, so the Orange Revolution happened in 2004. This is now 2006 after the prime minister vote. And the Orange Revolution, the Orange Coalition now is being called up once again to save the day for Ukraine, or the European Union side of Ukraine at least. And they want to oust Yanukovych once again. Well, it happens. And he is ousted, and a new prime minister is put in place. Yanukovych wins the election, and there's a little bit of peace. A little bit of peace until there is an investigation open up on Burisma Holdings and their embezzlement scheme behind the Ukrainian people, and how they're taking money from the Ukraine government. What's going on there? We never really found out because the investigation was never complete. You see, Yanukovych and this guy's investigation were thwarted by another revolution. And you can imagine who funded this one. This revolution, not the Orange Revolution, that was the first one. This one's called the Euromaidan. Okay, and the Euromaidan, they have press media, they have its own news press. Always, never truly what it seems. But because who is this press produced by? Well, the Euromaidan press was produced none other than, it says right here, the readers contributed, and the International Renaissance Foundation shares its movement registered as a non-government organization. Okay, so it was funded by the International Renaissance Foundation. These revolutions, they're not organic. Okay, they're never, I would say, ooh, is that true? Never organic? But that would mean that some of these protests on our side are not very organic either. And I almost want to say that that's true. But we'll continue on without the conspiracy theory, because we have history to rely on here. So after Yanukovych is ousted and his prosecutor general flees, a new prosecutor general comes in after this new president is elected. So the new president after Yushchenko, after Yanukovych, is now it is, like I said, what is your name? Poroshenko, not Yushchenko. Poroshenko. That's the new guy, Poroshenko. If I was saying Poroshenko before, I don't even know. It's so confusing. Actually, the reason for the Euromaidan revolution, besides the Burisma holding stuff, let's be real. It was because a day before the Euromaidan revolution, Yanukovych signed a deal with Russia instead of the EU. He met with the EU and everyone was getting excited. But then a couple of days later, he met with Russia and it sounded like a better deal to him. So he took the Russian one. So that's why the Euromaidan revolution happened. He didn't choose the EU, but this guy chose the EU. As soon as he gets elected, he signs, Poroshenko, the new president, signs immediately with the EU. And then what does he do? Oh, you're going to love this. He gives George Soros the pretty much Ukrainian Medal of Honor. Let me find it in my notes. Poroshenko gives George Soros a civil... Let me see if I pulled it up. Ukraine president gives high state award to Soros. The Ukraine president, Petro Poroshenko, has awarded U.S. financier and billionaire philanthropist George Soros with Ukraine's Order of Liberty. Yes, it was presented in Kiev on November 12th. This is what he says. Your intense activities during recent years have extremely promoted the democratic change that we now have happening in Ukraine. Applause, George Soros. Again, we'll repeat this. Your intense activities during recent years, intense. This guy would know. He was probably witnessed it all to get elected. Poroshenko. Poroshenko says, your intense activities during recent years have extremely promoted the democratic change that we now have happening in Ukraine. Because there's so much emphasis on democracy, and even George Soros's foundation is called Open Democracy. What a great sound. I want to remind people of our republic and this idea that we are all equal under the law and no one is above the law, so that you are no more better than I am. And that's a reminder to the elites out there. We, as Americans, have lost our republic.